Brandon had everything most people dream of: wealth, success, power. But in the silence of his penthouse, success sounded a lot like loneliness. Every evening, he'd return to a spotless apartment with no one waiting. His assistant had begged him to try something new, a blind date, maybe a chance at connection. So that Friday night, Brandon found himself sitting in the most elegant restaurant in town. Crisp white tablecloth, crystal glass, soft jazz floating through the air. He checked his watch, once, twice. An hour passed. The woman he was supposed to meet never showed. Waiters glanced his way with quiet pity. Pride told him to leave, but something made him stay. Maybe hope. Maybe habit. Just as he reached for his coat, the doors opened. A young woman hurried in, breathless, her clothes simple and worn. She looked around nervously, clutching a small purse as if it held her whole life. Her name was Amara, though he didn't know it yet. And in the next few minutes, Brandon's empty table would no longer be empty. If you believe one moment can change two lives forever, subscribe, and join us on this journey. Amara had spent the entire day chasing buses and hope. She'd seen a help-wanted sign online. The restaurant was hiring part-time staff. She'd come straight after her shift at a local bakery, hair tied back, shoes scuffed, heart pounding. She stepped inside, overwhelmed by the chandeliers and soft chatter. For a moment, she almost turned back, until her eyes landed on a table where a man sat alone. "Are you Mr. Brandon?" she asked timidly. He looked up, surprised. Then, for the first time in a long while, he smiled. "I suppose I am," he said, amused. She apologized quickly and sat down, clutching her handbag nervously. She thought she was here for a job interview, and Brandon, curious and intrigued, didn't correct her. They ordered coffee. He asked about her life. She hesitated, then spoke softly, about growing up in the city's forgotten corners, working 3 jobs, caring for her little brother since their mother passed. Brandon listened, captivated. Her words carried more truth than any boardroom speech he'd ever heard. For a moment, he forgot the fancy table, the missing date, the world outside. When she laughed shyly at his dry humor, it felt like the sound of something he didn't know he'd been missing: sincerity. By the time she realized her mistake, the waiter was clearing empty cups. Her eyes widened in embarrassment. "Oh my God, you're not the manager, are you?" Brandon chuckled softly. "No. But I'd still like to see you again." The next day, Amara hesitated before returning. She'd convinced herself it was a bad idea. A CEO and a girl who could barely afford rent didn't belong in the same story. But Brandon wasn't like anyone she'd ever met. When she walked into the cafe they'd agreed on, he stood to greet her. No arrogance, no judgment, just warmth. They talked for hours, about life, family, dreams. Brandon found himself admiring her resilience. Yet part of him struggled. His world was one of luxury, hers was built on survival. His assistant noticed the change in him: missed meetings, late nights, a softer tone. "Brandon," she said carefully, "people are starting to talk." He brushed it off. Let them. But when Amara overheard one of his colleagues at the cafe mocking her, calling her a charity project, she quietly excused herself. Brandon found her outside moments later, eyes glistening. "You don't have to do this," she said, voice trembling. "You don't have to pretend." He took a step closer. "Pretend what?" "That someone like you could care about someone like me." He looked at her, speechless. The city hummed around them, lights reflecting in her tears. "I don't care where you came from," he said quietly. "I care about who you are." But Amara shook her head, whispering, "You deserve better." Then she turned and walked away. Days passed. Brandon tried to focus on work, but the boardroom felt emptier than ever. He replayed her words in his head, realizing just how blind he'd been, not to her background, but to how small she must have felt beside him. He didn't want her to feel less than. He wanted her to feel seen. So one evening he went looking, through the city streets, bakeries, and diners, until finally he found her. She was wiping tables at a late-night cafe, exhausted, hair tied back, but still wearing that quiet dignity he admired. When she saw him, she froze. "Brandon? What are you doing here?" He smiled gently. "I came to return something." She frowned. "Return what?" "My heart," he said softly. "I think I left it with you." Amara stared, unsure if he was joking, until she saw the sincerity in his eyes. He walked closer. I don't care about money, or image, or what people think. You reminded me that life isn't about status, it's about connection. He placed a small card on the table. It wasn't a business card, it was a college scholarship application, underwritten by his company, in her name. Tears filled her eyes. Why would you do this? Because, he said, voice warm, you deserve the world, and I'm tired of pretending I don't need you in mine. She covered her face, trying not to cry. That night, they talked until the cafe lights dimmed. Two souls, one powerful, one persistent, realizing they were stronger together. Months later, Amara walked across a university campus, her books in hand and her head held high. Brandon watched from a distance, proud and humbled. Their story had become more than love. It was proof that kindness could build bridges even between worlds that never meet. Brandon still ran his company, but something had changed. He smiled more, laughed more, lived more. Every Friday, they'd return to that same restaurant, not as a CEO and a poor girl, but as two people who had chosen each other. The waiter always smiled when they arrived. Your usual table, he'd ask. Brandon would glance at Amara and reply, yes, the one where the world began again. Sometimes, the greatest miracles happen when we least expect them. A missed date, a simple mistake, can become the beginning of a lifetime. Because love doesn't see wealth or titles, only heart. What would you have done if you were Brandon? Tell us in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that warm the heart.